Hello, everyone. Yair Spitz from the field here with an update. So today we were notified that we need to start preparing our basically our entire battalion, the majority of our battalion, to get up and move to a different location. Can't go into details about where that would be, but that's a huge, huge undertaking. We spent the last week getting situated while also being active. And now we basically have to pack everything up while still being on call. So that's been a very, very busy undertaking for the past day. But that's part of the dynamics of war, where there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty. And even though we were sure that we were going to be here in this specific location for weeks, for reasons that I can't detail, the decision was made by the higher ups that we will be needed, or that we will best serve the Army's bigger goals in a different location. And it's amazing to see how, even though people finally got comfortable, even the simple soldiers, everyone's got their tent, everyone has finally figured out, their sleeping area, and have figured out what works better, what's to find some level of comfort. People figured out, they just yesterday they brought in chemical bathrooms for us to use. Until then, we didn't have even that. People figured out, already started to develop relationships with some of the people in the small moshav nearby. People found people they can do laundry by or go take a shower, and all that. Now is going to stop at once, and we have to go to a completely different area and start to build a camp in an open field again. But what it's amazing to see is that I don't think I heard even a single person complain. I'm not talking just about the officers who are accustomed to the rigidity of the army and of accepting orders, but also the simple soldiers. I don't think I heard a single person complain, because everyone understands that we're at war and that we're here to serve Am Yisrael. We're here to follow orders, and the purpose of all that is to do our best, and that the tremendous trust in our commanders, and therefore that's what we've been doing for the last day. But even so, there's always times during the day when there's time to have conversations, and people have to eat, people have to stop from the work to rest, take a drink. So at some point today, I was on my way to take care of something, and I see 4 or 5 soldiers sitting in the shade of one of the vehicles, just resting a little bit. And they called me over. They saw me walk by, and they said, I said, Rabbi, come join us. So I said, okay. It was 4 soldiers that I didn't really know that well. So I said, okay, here's a good opportunity. And I come to sit down with them. And the first thing that I noticed is that they all seemed extremely, extremely young. Not all of the reservists are people in their late 20s or 30s. There are also quite a lot of young men and women who actually just got out of their mandatory service within the last year, 2, 3 years. And these 4 or 5 soldiers, I can't be sure, but it looked like they were very young. They all looked like they were in their early to mid 20s. Then the soldier who invited me over to sit down, so he turns to me and he says, so what do you have to say to us? Just kind of like straight out. So I said the first thing that came to mind. I said, how I'm sure you are all familiar with the phrase "Avarnu et Paro, na'avor gam et zeh." The phrase. We've been through. We overcame Pharaoh and the hardships of Egypt, and we'll overcome this as well. So it's a common phrase that's used. And I said to them, so it's not just that just like we've been through that, we'll get over this. I said one day people will look back at the events of these days, and the events that happened a few weeks ago, and what we're doing here now, and they'll be able to refer back to these events and say, Avarnu et milchemet simchat Torah, na'avor gam et zeh. We overcame the challenge and the difficulty of the war of Simchat Torah, or whatever it's going to end up being called. We'll get past this as well, referring to future difficulties. And I said it, and I said, usually this would sound like a cliche, but war, there's no better time to say cliches. You're allowed to say cliches during the time of war, and right now we're participating in something that's historic. And people will refer back to these times in the future. And I said that fills me with a sense of purpose and a sense of confidence, and fills me with a sense of motivation. A very interesting discussion developed then between all of us. And then at some point, one of the soldiers said, he said, "What is that?" He turned to me and said, "What is actually your job as the army rabbi?" So I thought it would be interesting after all these updates to explain it to all of you as well. So I said to him, look, I said the army rabbi has three jobs. The first is to supply religious services. He says, and that's either to religious soldiers, and just like soldiers have different needs, they need someone to supply them with water and food and things of that sort. Then they also need someone to supply them with religious services, and that means if they need religious artifacts, they need tefillin, they need tzitzit, they need someone to help them organize a minyan, and anything of that sort. So I said, so that's the first, and I guess the simplest job, lowest layer of the job of the rabbi. I said the second one, which I haven't really spoken about yet, which I'm happy I haven't had the chance to speak about yet, and that is what is in Hebrew called chalalim, and that is the deceased. So the army rabbi, chaplain, is the one who's in charge of dealing with any situation in which there are soldiers who, God forbid, have died. I won't talk about that in too much length, but I've gone through training, repeated training in order to know what to do, and that's aimed at two different things. One is to maintain the kavod of the deceased, and the other is to do whatever is needed in order to be able to identify the deceased as quickly as possible, with the understanding that has also, of course, is very important to the families, but also could affect the mission, depending on who it is, depending on who's missing, things of that sort. And when, God forbid, something like that happens, everything stops, and most people have a bit of a shock, and they're not sure what to do. And then that is something that in the past, when there wasn't an army rabbi or an army rabbi who knew what to do, it basically could cause a platoon or a battalion to just completely stop its activity, because suddenly the news gets out and everyone's calling and everyone wants to know what's going on, and therefore it's extremely vital that there's one person or a unit. It's not just me. I have soldiers underneath me, under my command, who know exactly what to do and know who to call. It's a whole Torah on its own. So that's the second job. And then I went on to say, and then there's the third job, which in my mind is the highest of the three, and that is morale. And that is, in Hebrew, the term is called ruach lechima, a fighting spirit. And that is to maintain for the soldiers, to maintain for them a high morale, and that's done by two ways. One is being an address for individual soldiers who are interested in someone to talk to, either because they're having a difficulty or they just someone to cheer them up or someone to speak to them, but also on the not just the individual soldiers, but also for the platoon, for groups of soldiers. And I said to them, like we're doing right now. And I said that's about trying to make sure that everyone keeps their focus on the big picture. I said, and the commanders themselves they also care about this. They also care about keeping morale high, but they all have a specific job that they have of overseeing the supply of the ammunition. A different commander, his job is to oversee the fact that to calculate the targets correctly. So of course, every commander also cares about their soldiers and tries to make an effort to notice any issues they have and keep their morale high. But that's not their main job. And I said there's one person that is the essence of their job. This is not the term I use for them, but it's very similar. It's not really similar. It's the exact idea of the Kohen Mashuach Milchama that's referred to in the Torah, and that is in olden times, there was a Kohen, there was a priest, I guess a Kohen, he had a specific job, and he had the same status similar to the status of a Kohen Gadol, and his job was to go out with the troops and to keep the morale high and to boost their morale and to fill them with a sense of faith and emunah and confidence in what they were doing. And he would speak to them before they went into battle. The army, the Israeli army rabbi model is based on that model. So I didn't use those terms with them, but that's the idea that I told them. They went on to ask me, what kind of questions do I get as a army rabbi? So I actually shared with them a few of the stories that I've shared with all of you. I shared with them the question about smoking on Shabbat during war, and I shared with them also. I debated whether this was was a smart thing to do or not, but I shared with them also the story of the soldier who came to say that he feels alone. And that the fact he doesn't have a spouse and he doesn't have kids yet, and he feels all these soldiers who at night speak to their wives and their children, and he feels alone. And I could see that the question resonated with them, and then I told them the two answers that I've already shared with you. I said, one, I told them, you're not alone. You have your comrades, you have your brothers, you have your sisters, you have the Jewish, you have all the citizens of Israel, all of Am Yisrael. You have all of the Am Yisrael in overseas. I told them about you. I told them about these updates. I said that so you're not alone. And then I told them the second answer, which is that, and this is probably the reason I shared this story with them. They're all fairly young, so I don't know. I doubt too many of them are yet thinking about marriage yet. But I thought maybe it would be good for them to start thinking about it. And I told them what I said to that soldier. You have a wife. You just haven't met her yet. You have children. They just haven't been born yet. And I was happy to see that it resonated with them, and they seemed to. They said that they think it's a beautiful answer. One of them said to me, "Oh, so you're basically the psychologist for the battalions." I said, "Well, I'm not officially the psychologist, but someone needs to be looking out for the soldiers." Emotional and psychological and spiritual welfare, and that's my job. What was something funny that happened as I was talking to them. So the Magad, which is the battalion commander, he's a very high-ranking officer. Sometimes he's in the field with us, and sometimes he goes to meet with the higher-ups. So he happened to walk by while we were sitting there, and we had been sitting there for a while. So he walks by and he says to me in Hebrew, he says, "Rav, ata noten lahem shiur boker?" says, Rabbi, you're giving them a morning shir. So which I found interesting that he was familiar with that term. And I said, Ken? I said, yes. He said, Yofi. And he continued going. I had hoped that he might sit down with us, but just that acknowledgement for both me and the soldiers was meaningful, and hopefully next time he'll join us as well.